So we are the team from Dunwoody College of Technology in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My name is Jake Blue, this is Brandon Davis. We had a team of 6, but due to financial constraints in our small program, only 2 of us could make it today, so we're representing the group. We are in our 4th semester, our last semester at a 2-year program in surveying and civil engineering technology. Again, we're from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And like I said, there were 6 of us that took place in this competition, but Brandon and I will be representing the entire group today.
So many of you here are part of the competition, so you know the project goals. Mainly had to look for those right-sized land. We had to build a packet and then just make a map and do this presentation we're doing right now. The project limitations were basically everything above ground, so it also includes not opening any manholes, also staying safe and generally out of danger, and stay out private property. I mean, we're students and we don't want to get in trouble. All right, so this is where we be our project location, just to the southwest there. Just a part of a park. I'm not close enough to the mic. So we picked the location based upon its proximity to our school so that we can continue to work on it at every given moment that we have free. It's a pretty nice location. There's not much going on. Get a little closer view here. So there's our Twin Cities school. And here's our project location. It's mostly dense forest. There's actually a hill on the left side there. We'll talk more about the existing conditions here in a little bit.
So when we started our project, basically we started with a lot of research just to figure out where our boundaries were. And to find these documents, we had a number of sources, namely the City of Minneapolis, their Records Department, the Parks Department. We also went to Hennepin County to ask for their survey records. We looked at Minnesota Department of Transportation records. We had to pull a regional railroad authority map, and were given some help from a local survey company. They are an authority in the area with records. And then there was a lot of web-based research that we were able to find, both from the county, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and from FEMA. I won't list all of the documents that we looked at, but just to give you an idea, these are a few of the plats, deeds, and contemporary documents that we were able to reference.
The parcel history was, it's been a park ever since the park board started registration. So, for that area, and then the parade itself actually was extended. Yeah, so it didn't get its renamed to the parade until 1904. Then the ice arena came in, but this is the issue for our little section of the parade. There was actually quite a big long history to the other part of the parade, but none of those events. There was an NFL, polo teams, baseball, football. It was just crazy. It was a center point of all of the city. Would go there to play sports, activities, presidential campaigns. So it was a nice little place. It was always kept kind of separate as a nice little reflection area. So when it comes to the history of it, it's quite small for any actual changes to the property.
I should mention that our parcel is one of the few remaining undeveloped, unplatted parcels in Minneapolis, which made it difficult for us because there's no modern drawing for just our section of land. We had to really do some research to figure out how we were defining this chunk of land. And it all started with this plat. This is the initial plat of that piece of land. It was designed as a neighborhood but never built. And this Groveland plat is the basis for all the subsequent plats. They all took their calls to lines from this drawing. And I'll show you just a few of them as we go through here. This plat shows the parcel is kind of shaded in there called Spring Lake Park, and it's defined on the southern boundary by Kenwood Boulevard, and that's where this plat takes its name. So this was a big drawing for us in locating the southern boundary. Again, this is another subsequent plat. It was designed but never built. I think we found 6 or 7 plats that were designed but never built in this area. And then eventually in 1910 they designed this development drawing, which is known as the parade, and again never constructed, but a lot of the calls to line work that we needed to find came from these older drawings.
The legal description was kind of an interesting one. At one point, it was considered being renamed, so a lot of the plats would still show that Hayata on it. So that's one complication. So we'd have to look for multiple names. We'd have to look for Spring Lake Park, Hyatt, and the parade when looking for research. It was just interesting fact, the way it got its name, the parade, was actually because it was next to a military base, and they would have their parades there. So it's kind of a little fun thing. It's mostly wooded. It's pretty simple there. It's about 11 acres, but here I'll show you a picture. Oh, that's great. All right, well, I guess the green line right there is an actual paved trail through the area. You'll see a lot of bikers going through there, a lot of runners, very active place. Down to the left down there, you're gonna see a pump house that's actually just off-site of the property, but it took a chunk out of ours at one point. The ice house, that's also just right next to our kind of our defining boundary almost, just really close to that. And then we have Kenwood on the bottom and 394 on the top. But so you can see the woods there. There's actually a dip. We'll show you that later. It's mostly swampland. There's some fences, but mostly it was pretty undeveloped and untouched.
So our piece of property is owned by the City of Minneapolis Parks Department, and what's interesting about this is to the east and the west of our parcel is also City of Minneapolis property, and on the north is Minnesota Department of Transportation right-of-way. To the south is City of Minneapolis right-of-way. So it's all public land. Most of it's owned by the City of Minneapolis, which means when we went out to do our surveying, we didn't find any irons on our parcel because the City of Minneapolis was not in the business of delimiting their own property, which made it was a challenge to find our boundary. Our parcel is defined by the parcels that surround it. So again, the right-of-way of the interstate, Kenwood Boulevard to the south, and then 2 City of Minneapolis properties to the east and west. There was one section, our northwesterly parcel boundary was calculated by means of reduction, as in we included what was not included in everything that surrounds it.
Now I'm going to give an example of some of the research we did. We're going to try to find, we found our parcel for the right-of-way map online, which is something we have in Minnesota. It's a really great resource at our fingertips. Then we went to the central office to look at the right-of-way map. They were really kind to us there and helped us out and got really excited about our project. So this will be the first half of the project, and you can see here's our location. A little closer, we'll be looking for this line here. So to find this, I had to do the look for the commissioner's orders and backtrack. I had to find multiple lines so I could find the offset line. And then we had to go to the second half of the plat here to pull up everything that had to do with that whole front line was based on this one corner. So we had a little bit of difficulty with that. Then we just followed the line down. It was quite, And we resulted in this beautiful drawing right here. You can see in the top right, there's no laser pointer. We did have a problem with, there's a building that's built right up along the actual property line, so we couldn't get a GPS signal. So we had to do some triangulation. It was interesting. And then we just lined it up with the existing, and followed it and turned it into the right angle and everything. It looks decent.
So for our field work, I should mention that in Minnesota, we're lucky enough to have a county coordinate system for all 83 counties, I believe we have. So we based all of our field work off of the Hennepin County coordinate system where we're located. And all of our GPS locating, our base point for our GPS was what we call the Dunwoody nail, which is a mag nail that we sent in 2014 and located through Opus Corrections. We then went out and located the North Quarter corner, where a lot of our line work is based off of. And our parcel contains the center of section, although it was never monumented. The center of our section actually falls in shallow water. And with the freeze thaw that we have, there was no way for them to set a permanent monument that would move around, at least not without a lot of work. So they never set a monument there. We then set mag nails for our total station work, and we were able to find some lot corners, some irons for adjacent properties south of ours, and we used those to help align our line work for the right-of-way to the south. And like I said before, we did search for parcel corners on our property, but we were unable to find any irons because Minneapolis, I don't want to say they didn't care, but it wasn't, they were not in the business of marking their property boundaries, their internal property boundaries. And so we did GPS location of all of the existing conditions, the above ground utilities, the water line, pathways, curb and island in the roadways to the south, building corners for the ice arena to our east, and the Aldrich building, which Brandon had mentioned was the basis for finding our right-of-way lines for 394, the interstate. We did collect some topo data with the GPS and with the total station, and we checked that against the Minnesota DNR LiDAR data that's made publicly available, and we found that we were definitely within tolerance of all of that. And I guess here's an example of our drawing, just to show you some of the work that went into it. We really did have to do some heavy digging to find all of these lines. And here's the important lines. When we went out to shoot with the GPS on the pond section, we were lucky enough in Minnesota it was frozen, so we could walk out on the ice and find the water line pretty easily. And it lined up almost perfectly with the LiDAR data that we had gathered. And here's a hybrid of a mosaic and our drawing together, so you can kind of see what the existing conditions are like. And again, you see center section there is in the shallow water. It's hard to get to.
Hard to get to, but Jake still put some waders on and checked anyway.
So in our project, we found several inconsistencies. Mainly, the GIS lines that we were looking at from Hennepin County did not line up with what we thought were our parcel boundaries at all, so we had to do some research there. Also, we found inconsistencies in the NAD 83 corrections that we were using. Hennepin County was using the 1986 corrections, and our equipment was set up on the 2011 correction, so there was a little discrepancy there. And then when we were looking at all these historical documents, we found that there were different calls to length on the same lines, and we had to figure out how to resolve that issue. So here's an example of the GIS line versus our parcel boundary line, which obviously don't line up at all. And some examples of different calls to length for the same line that we found. And the NAD 83 discrepancy, as you can see here in our CAD drawing. And so to resolve these issues, we basically ignored the GIS lines because they were not survey graded, so we could throw those out right away. And we based all of our decisions on the assumption that the intent of the original surveyors was not to leave any gaps or overlaps. So when we found multiple calls to the same line, we assumed that distance to be true as long as it lined up with everything else and made sense. And the difference between the 86 and 2011 corrections explained the difference in position for our found corners and our north quarter corner.
So after some digging through some zoning regulations, we were able to figure out that there's actually very little space for any housing development due to the swamp area. We would be able to get 2, 3 if we can really push it. So we're going to recommend that it stays a park, as valuable of a resource it is to hold that water from the rain. So it was kind of our idea like that, and there's just a lot of cleanup for it, so a lot of trees. Didn't see the economic point of it. As you can see down on the bottom left there, the next topograph here, there's a big hill there, so it's really not ideal. Any questions? Questions?
With your, what was your overall, when you determined your, the quality of your data, what was the overall standard error that you encountered?
As far as, so you mean between the corrections for NAT 83?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, I'm assuming you set control for your total station with the run an RTK on GPS, right?
Yes.
Okay. So from there, then, when you matched it all up, did you run any type of adjustment on that to see what the residuals were?
Yeah, most of our points were within 2 100ths, which was 1 in 40,000 or something like that. We were pretty good on our GPS location.
Yeah, that's what I was curious. So this is the
That was after we corrected for NAT 83. The average error that we found between the 2 corrections in our area was about 0.6 of a foot. So once you factor the NAT 83 corrections in, we were within a couple hundredths.
nice. Good job.
I have a question. You said you were along a couple of major highways.
Yes.
How did you deal with access to those, and how did you deal with your safety management through there?
Well, the entire time we were there, we wore.
Well, we should say that we never accessed the interstate highway. That was part of our safety plan, was to stay off of the interstate. And it's raised from our area. It goes over a bridge right there, so it's not immediately adjacent. It's 20 feet above our parcel with a sound wall.
With no easy access to get to that area unless you get on way. So, but then we would go in groups of 2, and we had our own safety gear. We had a plan so that everybody knew when we'd be going out. And so it was try to do our best.
Thank you.
We'll make sure that the judges have an opportunity for questions, because prior events, we had a whole section for you, so I want to make sure that you're addressed separately, make sure you have any questions.
How many days did you take for your field work? Was it all conducted?
Our field work was,
Cumulatively, I guess it would be like, I don't know, we started it and we went out there a couple hours here, a couple hours there, and then a couple of us came in on weekends. It was
basically from early November of last year until the end of January.
It's kind of hard to, lots of hours.
You mentioned that you went to the south and found some pins on an adjacent plat. Is that plat that's owned by the city, or a portion that's owned by the city, or was that a private residential area?
It was private residential. We didn't go on the properties, but we found the irons that were clearly marked right along the right-of-way, and that helped us to align our right-of-way drawing.
Those properties are really expensive, so they like to keep it. They want people to know where their property is, so.
And how did you find the distances between those based on what the plat dimensions were and what you found in the field?
Again, they were, I want to say within a half a foot most of the time, which I think is because of our NAT 83 corrections from 2011 to 1986. So when we adjusted for NAT 83, all of those pins lined up very nicely on our right of way.
So you were doing it all on the grid, or did you convert to ground scale on your maps? Was it all on, your final map, is it all on the, I have a copy of it in the file, but.
It's all in CAD.
Yeah, but it's CAD, but I'm talking about the coordinate system. Are you on state plane coordinates there?
It's
or-
all Hennepin County coordinate system.
Hennepin County,
Yep.
okay. So that, is that a ground scale?
It's more of a localized system.
Well, I know that Hennepin County has a long history of remonumentation going back into the 50s and 60s. They were doing quite extensive, so those are the monuments that you did find, like the North Quarter Corner, was it?
The North Quarter Corner, yes. After we adjusted for NAT 83 and we located that North Quarter Corner, we were within 2/100ths, I believe.
So essentially then, if you're on Hennepin County, then you could localize onto there, using your GPS and localize onto Hennepin County, and then did everything on that?
Correct.
Okay.
The fence along your northeasterly or northwesterly line, looks like chain link fence that's onto the property, is that the DOT fence?
No, that's City of Minneapolis fence line.
Okay.
There were a couple of what I would call encroachments if they were different property owners, but because it's all the same property owner, we didn't consider that to be an encroachment. Thank you.